Hi everyone. We are getting ready for our Facebook live chat, and I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes to join. Today's class is on safety. Hi everyone. So I'm just getting ready for our Thursday Facebook live chat on safety on the trails and while hiking. So I'm just going to give everyone just like a minute to join us for today's class on safety. How's everyone doing? I hope you guys are doing good and looking forward to this conversation with you guys. Where is everyone joining in from? Let me know in the comments where you're joining from. And today's class is all on safety on the trails and safety in general when it comes to hiking. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys and talking about safety. We're going to discuss so many different topics. Just going to give everyone just a few more minutes. Hi. Okay, looks like we have someone joining from Newnan, Georgia. Angela. Hey, Angela. Nice to chat with you. Hope you're doing well and staying safe. Stacy is joining in from Utah. Awesome. Yay. Go Utah. And I'm here in Southern California, and my name is Karla. I am the co-founder of the 52 Hike Challenge, and super thankful to be healthy and to be able to share my love of hiking with you guys. And looks like Sharon is joining us from Harrisonburg, Virginia. Love it. Okay, so it's 5:02, and why don't we go ahead and get started? So let me explain today's class. We are going to be talking about safety on the trails and safety in general when it comes to hiking. I have some information up on my screen, so I may share some of that as we are chatting, but I'd really like for this to be an interactive experience. Feel free to comment and ask any questions you have. Let's touch on different subjects. And it looks like Erica is joining us from Los Angeles. Hi, Erica. So let me know where you're joining from. And without further ado, let's get started on today's class. And what are you guys drinking? I have some orange juice today and a little bit of water. So hope you guys have something fun to drink. Let me know what you have in the chat. So yeah, let's talk about hiking and being safe. You know, that's one of the most important things for us here at 52 Hike Challenge, is that when you're out hiking, you are doing it safely and you are prepared. It looks like Maria's joining us from Edmonton, and I'm guessing that is somewhere in water. Everyone's bringing water. So cool. Awesome. So I think we have someone from Canada. Maria might be joining us from there. And we have Nicole's joining from New York. Very cool. All right, so let's get started, you guys. We're going to talk about hiking safety today. And please ask whatever you want in terms of what we can cover. All right, it sounds like we've got our group now. We have about 30 participants. All right, so safety on the trails. Like, one of the biggest things that is really important when we first start hiking is making sure that you let someone know where you're going to be hiking at. So really, really important. There's an app that I talked about last week called Karen, and that app allows you to put in a safety circle. So when you start on the trailhead, as long as you have reception, you can notify your safety circle when you start your trail and then when you're back at your car. So that's one tip, but obviously you can leave a note, you can text someone. Having a good plan is really, really key when it comes to being safe outdoors. Especially like if you're doing a local hike, and you're like, you've done it many, many times. it's really up to you if you want to notify someone. It's also still good to leave a note on your desk or in your home and say, on a hike, we'll be back by whatever time, and let the person know what trail you're hiking. But again, let's just say you're doing a hike that's like longer, that maybe you haven't been on. Absolutely should always leave a note. And also they recommend leaving a note underneath your seat, your car seat, in case something happens and, there's some sort of information as to where you may have gone, etc. So anyhow, as we keep chatting, feel free to leave your comments and then we'll address those different safety concerns. But yeah, really, really important is to always let someone know where you're going, and have some form of an emergency plan if possible, depending on what you're doing. Like if you're doing a backpacking trip, you're definitely going to want to have more preparation than if you're just going on a local hike that you've been on many, many times. Other things you can do, these are just like right off the bat notes, are things like dressing for the elements and the weather. So one of the things we've talked about in our last classes, and if you've missed any of the classes, make sure to check out our YouTube page. We have all of the classes now published on that page. And so one of the most important things is to study the weather before you go out. So like, let's say you're doing a long day on a peak, you want to check the weather the night before and make sure that you prepare. And last week we touched on how as you gain elevation, the temperature drops. So you want to make sure that you have the proper clothing and layers, etc. So all of that was covered last week. So please check on our YouTube for the video so you can learn more. There's nothing worse than being on a trail and not being prepared and being cold. That could lead to making mistakes, and that is the last thing we really want. So really, really important. And then obviously I always say, right, if you're going to have really horrible weather, basically make sure that the mountains are always going to be there. So your safety comes first. If you don't know, how to use mountaineering equipment, if you're not trained for the mountains and snow, please stay away from the mountains in the wintertime. That's one of the greatest ways to be safe, is to just understand your limits. So really, really, really important. So the other thing that you really, and we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, is to understand how to read a map. So important, you guys, to learn how to read a map and to know how to use a map and compass. Actually, funny, I'm going to pull something. I was just noticing that I had, my map here, which I talked about last week. And so being able to understand where you are in, on the trail, learning how to read, what different mountains look like. So if you get lost, you're able to hopefully find your way back to your car. You also want to keep your map in a Ziploc bag in case it rains or something happens. Really, really important. So other things we want to talk about is, and again, these are all things we've talked about over the last few classes, is, making sure you always have the 10 essentials. So the reason why you always want to carry the 10 essentials, and if you don't know what the 10 essentials are, please go to our website and look up 10 essentials. You'll find them in the resources and under our store. But anyhow, the 10 essentials will keep you safe in case you had to stay overnight out in the outdoors because, like I said, something like getting lost, etc., which we're also going to talk about in a little bit. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of the 10 essentials because we have a lot to cover. And again, if you have questions regarding safety, anything specific you want to go over, let's discuss it as a community. So, one of the really, really great things that we've been talking about is bringing some sort of a GPS device with you, especially if you're going to do more backcountry hiking, backcountry backpacking. I did the John Muir Trail last year in August, and every night I had my spot device, and we would basically let the people, you set up your group of people that are notified. We would basically send them a note letting them know every night we arrived safely, we were in our camp, and so on. And so I know a lot of people really like the Garmin GPS, so that's an option. So the more time you're going to spend outside, remember that's that increases the likelihood of you at some point possibly needing support. So you want to make sure you're prepared for that. So assess when you need to invest into something like a GPS device, and super important. Another thing is, and I see my friend Bill is on the chat, and so we were just going to get into wilderness medicine, right? And so when we're out on the trails, so many things could happen. You just never know. So one of the greatest things you can do is educate yourself. And what you can do is take a course. There's the WUFA course, which is the Wilderness First Aid course, which will teach you what to do in case of, you break a foot, or you break a toenail, or a toe, or if you have blisters, if you have scrapes, etc. So really, really important to understand how to treat these injuries. And I've talked to several people that have had this happen, where they were with someone and someone fell and broke a foot, and someone fell. And so you don't want to be the person that doesn't know what to do. So make sure that depending on where you're going, that you're prepared for those circumstances. And, you have to be responsible for yourself. If you're going to go enjoy nature, you have to be responsible for yourself. So really, really highly recommend that you invest in a first aid class, learn how to do CPR. If you can, go and do the WUFA class or course. And there's many different ways to take it. I know that Sierra Club has some companies they work with. REI offers the course, although right now, due to the circumstances, it's not possible to necessarily take these classes in person, but you can also look these classes up online. So that is an investment, but I highly recommend it for you as you continue your journey. So let's talk a little bit about dehydration and heat exhaustion. So as you're hiking more and more, you're going to want to get out more often. And it's so important to, again, prepare for the weather. And if it's really hot, my recommendation is cancel your trip, or go when it's, either super early in the morning, or wait until the afternoon where you're not at the peak of the heat of the moment, okay? Because the last thing you want is to be out in the middle of a trail and then you get sick. And heat exhaustion is not a joke. Like, it's actually quite severe and serious. And you need to make sure that if you start feeling that you bring your temperature down. So it's really, really important to understand your own limitations. And I think one of the biggest problems that happens in the outdoors is two things. One, either people are inexperienced, or two, someone's super experienced and they forget a key component of safety. So you don't want to be either of those. It's always better to be more cautious than to push yourself to that point of where you're going to have heat exhaustion or some sort of a injury of that sort. And I can tell you a story that when I was once at Zion, I actually had pretty bad heat dehydration, and I pretty much passed out in my tent, and I was severely dehydrated, and it was extremely hot. I actually ended up going with a Challenger at the time, and it was over 100 degrees, and it was 5 p.m. and my body just couldn't take it. So it was a dangerous situation. And definitely after that, noticed that anytime I would hike in the heat, I did not feel well. So it's just not worth it. So don't put yourself in that situation. So like I said, we're talking about so many different subjects when it comes to safety. Please add your comments, add your tips, because this is a community effort. Feel free to ask more questions. I'm going to keep going down the list of items that I have here when it comes to safety. So, okay, everyone, I think all our parents, our friends, people who don't know much about getting outside, one of the biggest things is, what about lions, tigers, and bears? Oh my, right? Like that's one of the biggest complaints or fears people have of the outdoors. And so there is a possibility that when you're out in nature, you're going to encounter a snake or you're going to encounter possibly a bear, depending on where you are located. So actually, we're in the process of finishing our leadership training course, and we touched on this very subject. One of the greatest things you can do before you get out is understand your terrain, understand where you're hiking, what the flora, fauna, and what kind of animals are potentially out there, so that you know what to do in case you encounter this situation or this type of fauna or flora. So let's talk about a couple of different circumstances. Let's say here in let's just go back to the John Muir Trail. There's potentially bears on the trail. And I swear to you, on my life, never thought we would encounter a bear. Day 3, I get into my tent and I hear this loud crash, crack, boom. And I was like, what was that? And I asked my tent or my hiking partner, she was still out, and I heard her say something, and I said, should I get out of my tent? And she said, yes. I get out of my tent, and I'm not kidding you, there was a bear within 10 feet from my tent. So I thought quick. I knew what to do because I had been, I'd actually researched this prior to going. So I grabbed my trekking poles like really quickly and I made myself look big, started yelling at it, and the bear ran, and it was with another bear. So it is very possible that you could encounter an animal on the trails, but knowing what to do before you encounter it is key. So do the research, find out what kind of animals are on the trail. In the summertime here in Southern California, there's tons of snakes. What do, right? The biggest thing you need to do is give it its space. Usually snakes they want nothing to do with you. So again, really, really important to understand what issues you might, or what animals or what other issues might arise. So Anna was talking about moose. So what I did is we have a blog post we wrote, and we got information from REI on what to do if you encounter animals. And all the links are on there. I'll add the links to this video when we're done. So what it says when a moose is around, if you see a moose, stay quiet and try to move away undetected, okay? And if it does see you, talk softly and move away slowly. Do not be aggressive. And it says, you might want to look for signs if the moose is upset. There's certain qualities and things that the moose is going to do. So if the moose attacks, try to get behind a tree or a boulder. And if there's nowhere to run, it says, if there's nowhere to hide, you actually want to run. It says moose typically won't chase you very far. That's a perfect example of before you go out, see what kind of animals are out there, go look up articles, and then aid yourself with that information. So, yeah, Stacey also wants to talk about moose. So we just talked a little bit about it. So now what happens, it says here in this article, if a moose knocks you to the ground, curl up in a ball with your hands wrapped around your head. Don't fight back. Doing so may encourage the moose to continue its attack. So super, super important. Understand what to do. Someone had a moose chase. So Maria says that it didn't chase her far, but it was scary. Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of the key things and important things to practice on the trails is awareness. That's why I do not recommend actually having your earphones in, etc. It's really important to always pay attention. And that's why I think hiking is such a mindfulness experience, because you do have to pay attention. A lot of times you'll hear things and then you can be aware, right? But if you have earplugs in, etc., you're not going to hear it and you can get into trouble. So the other thing, let's talk about poison ivy or oak, etc. So there's a trail here in Southern California that is known to have a lot of poison oak. So what we've done in the past when we led hikes there was we brought Technu, and Technu is it's like an ointment that you can put over in case someone accidentally scrapes around a bush or something like that. So again, if we just went out there willy-nilly without doing our research, we could have a potential that someone would, bump themselves against it. And then, we don't want that. So super important. One of the most important things to do is to be aware. Where am I hiking? What kind of, animals could I run into? So, let's talk a little bit about weather, and super, super important. Again, we talked about it briefly, but there's so many different potential things that could happen when it comes to weather. We talked about heat exhaustion. We talked about, when it's too hot, it's just better to cancel or to hike super early or super late. Thank you, Angela. Angela wants to talk about ticks. We will come back to ticks, super important. And I'm super glad that you brought that up. So one of the best things you can, do before your trip, like I said, is plan ahead, understand like different clouds. So on our link for that, under that safety page, you are going to have links to actually see the different cloud types, how the fronts work, and then you can kind of like do your own research, but really important. But let's talk a little bit about lightning. I know Colorado has, a lot of potential for lightning, especially when a lot of their hikes are up at like 14,000 feet, or they have tons of 14,000 feet peaks. And I've hiked up there, and I know that they recommend not hiking. I believe it's like afternoon or something, because that's when storms come in. And so there's signs, right? Like the clouds are dark, and you do not want to be on top of a peak or in an open field in case of a lightning strike or storm. So you actually want to make sure you understand what to do. And so again, in our article, we talk a little bit about how you can ensure that you don't get stuck in a situation, but really, really important. Here are some tips. It says, and this is from rei.com, move away from tall and solitary trees. Not a good idea. Descend from ridge lines or peaks, because lightning tends to strike prominent topographic features. So try to head for lower ground as soon as possible. Stay away from water. Super, super important. Make sure that if you have anything that's metal, like for example, external frame packs, ice axes, trekking poles, and crampons, leave them and, go to find a spot where you're going to be safer. Stay out of caves. You're going to want to insulate yourself from the ground. There's actually a specific way you can crouch down in case of lightning. So again, do your research, know what to do. I took a course on snow travel, and they taught us how to crouch. I can't do it right now because I'm in a chair, but it's super important to understand. And then, understanding again, a strike victim can be revived by CPR. So knowing CPR is something that we talked about earlier, and first aid. So let's see what comments you have. We have Stacy said, Annalisa and I have run into lightning, pretty scary now and then. I mean, it absolutely is. And then we're going to talk a little bit. Okay. So basically one of the most important things again is be aware, be prepared, understand what to do depending on where you live and what kind of weather there is. So I'm going to move backwards a little bit because someone talked about ticks and we wanted to touch on ticks. So there is such a thing as Lyme disease, which has created a lot of, it's really hard. I actually personally know someone that has Lyme disease, and it is absolutely awful to hear how they suffer from, like lots of issues with their nervous system and swelling and just a lot of things. So how do you get Lyme disease? It comes from ticks. So what you want to do actually, and why we talked about clothing in our classes, or like 2 classes ago, you actually it's better to wear long clothing that covers you as much as possible to keep ticks away. And in the past, one of our sponsors was Sawyer, and they actually have, permethrin, which you can permethrin your clothes, and it actually keeps ticks away. So you can also buy clothing nowadays that comes with like I think it comes sprayed already, so you may want to look into that. But the the best thing you can do is wear like high socks. And then obviously if you feel something, there's a certain way to remove ticks. That's why you should always carry tweezers with you in your pack. So you also should know how to remove ticks. You don't want to just pull them off, because that actually leaves stuff in there and it's not good. So really important to always look at yourself before you get in your car. It's good to just kind of take a look and understand, are there ticks where I'm hiking and on your animals, etc. So they like to hide in little spots like under your armpit and belly button. I mean, just be really, really conscientious. I have had a tick on me before, and I saw it right away and like freaked out, and thankfully it hadn't like attached. So yeah, it is stuff that we have to think about, but the most important thing you can do is like spray your clothes with mosquitoes and ticks, etc. So I would look into potentially doing something like spraying my clothing, because it dries out and then you're pretty much done, right? Like once it's dry, you're good. So let's see. We're going to see what else we've got going here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about snow. Because snow is a special condition depending on where you live. And snow is also the cause of, here in Southern California, we have Mount Baldy, and we have had so many circumstances where people go up there unprepared for snow circumstances, and then they get lost or they slip and fall, and it's not a good situation. So if you have not taken a snow travel course, which includes ice axe and mountaineering training, I would highly say stay off the mountains until the snow has melted. Just not worth your life. You need to know how to self-arrest. And I can tell you this, I've taken the class probably three times now. And even with the class, if you're not practicing, it's so easy to forget how to self-arrest. And, I've actually done mountaineering now, and there's a difference between taking a class and actually going out and practicing and actually doing a really steep incline climb. It's also really important, if you're going to do snow travel, to understand avalanche conditions, because the way that snowpack works, it's literally like there could be this not sustainable piece of snow here, and you have snowfall, and that's what causes avalanches, conditions, and stuff like that. And again, it's just not worth your life. So I know a lot of times on social media, people make it seem like they're amazing because they're up on a summit and they did mountaineering, but they really don't have the proper tools and equipment. And it's just not a good thing to let your ego get into this. We're here to have fun. We're here to hike. We're here to push ourselves. But at the same time, please be educated. Please learn how to use, crampons. You also need the proper shoes for crampons. I can honestly say that there's been times where I've been with a group and someone doesn't have the right shoes and they think they're going to put crampons on. And it's like, that's really dangerous, right? Need to have the proper equipment. So let's see what else we have. Anna says she loves hiking in the snow. I mean, again, if you have snow that is like flat surfaces with very little incline, I'm all for it. Go do snowshoeing, But again, once you start getting into snow climbing, where you really need the traction and you need to understand how to use it, it's just, unless you have the training, just don't do it. It's really just not worth it. So I think the last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about, and feel free to leave any comments or any, if there's something I didn't touch on, there's so much we can talk about when it comes to safety. But I think one of the biggest things is, what if there is a situation where you're on the trail and somehow you missed your turn and you're feeling like you're lost, right? A lot of these things we talked about, like having a GPS unit or knowing how to read a map and compass, that's what's going to save you. But let's just say you find yourself, you did everything right, and for some reason you're lost, and you don't have a map and compass with you or something like that, or your phone dies. The first thing you need to do is stop. Like, just stop and breathe and take a little bit of time to to gather your thoughts. And then obviously try to think. The worst thing you can do is keep going and then get lost even more. So you want to think about what do I remember? Are there any specific mountain ranges that I remember seeing when I came in, that kind of a thing. And then you're going to want to be observant, try to understand where you're, try to be observant of what you were, doing. Okay. But one of the things that, depending on the situation, you might want to stay in place. And that is why having the 10 essentials is key, because if you have your 10 essentials, you're going to be able to bivvy, and then hopefully in that time period, someone that you alerted is going to notify the authorities hey, we haven't seen our friend. They haven't been back. And that's why those 10 essentials are supposed to keep you overnight. So, these are all different tips and things to hopefully avoid you getting into any of these circumstances. But, just be mindful and take the time to really research and take the classes needed so that you can be safe out there and you can avoid having any situations like this happening in the future. So I think that's really it for today, and regarding safety and being outside and enjoying nature, and then being able to teach your friends and your family. So unless you guys have any other tips or questions that you want to add before I close out today's chat, let me know. But I'm going to leave the comments available before we call today's chat good. I'm not really seeing any other comments. I just see that people were drinking different things and joining from all kinds of places around the US and Canada. You're welcome, Sarah. Yeah, Erica, you had a great point. Real quick, Erica said, Erica Montoya, if you hike with pets, always inspect them for ticks. Yeah, we did talk about that. You're welcome, Maria, and Leanna, you're welcome. You're welcome, Gordon. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm absolutely not the expert on all of these subjects. More than anything, it's just good reminders, right? And we as a community, you guys all brought up good points. And, all we're here to do is to support you. But just remember, the number one thing is safety first. If something doesn't feel good, try to go with your gut. It's usually right. So better safe than sorry. The mountains are always going to be there. The trails are always going to be there. Super important. Stacy said she loves these classes. She always learns something new. Yeah, you guys, I love them too. They help me to become, more to just remind myself of what's important, and it's a good reminder, because you forget things sometimes. And Marie wants to know when we will have the backpacking live. Yes. So this was the last class for this session, but what's going to happen is this week I will actually get next week's and the next 4 weeks, since it sounds to me like the stay-at-home order is being extended for another month. I will do 4 more sessions, and we will actually be doing, the next classes are going to be on backpacking, camping, and I don't know what the other classes, but I know we kind of already pre-planned them. So keep an eye out on the newsletter and on social media, and I'm so excited. But we'll probably have a camping class first, because what's going to happen is we're going to take the camping information and then we're going to use it for the backpacking. So it's kind of like your, I want to call it like your foundation for backpacking. So that's step 1, and then you can get into step 2, which is the backpacking. D wants to know if someone recommended keeping a lint roller in the car for ticks. No one has done that, but that's a great idea. I haven't used that, but I think it's a great great idea. And I carry a lint remover, but I think, again, if you have a tick that's stuck in you, that's where you need to understand how to remove it safely, right? So, all right, you guys are so welcome, and I absolutely love reading your comments. And yeah, Maria said, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really look forward to these. I feel like it's helping with coping with the shelter in place. I can't, for some reason, read the whole comment with the shelter in place blues. Sheree says, first time seeing this, enjoyed myself. Very informative. You're so welcome. And Erica, you are so welcome. I'm so excited to teach the backpacking course. I absolutely love backpacking. It's amazing. And I actually am your girl for Backpacking 101. So, you guys, tomorrow at 9 a.m. on Instagram Live, I'm going to do a meditation, a 15-minute meditation. If you've never done a meditation and you'd like to join, please join us tomorrow at 9 a.m. live. And I'm just happy to serve you guys. So have an amazing night, you guys. Mwah, namaste. I'll see you soon, okay?